So, all
We're
right.
just gonna chop it up. Like I said, it's just a chance for people to get to the room, get a chance for people to get acclimated, and just give us a chance to interact with the audience,
You don't even
for
like
them to interact
background
with us.
music?
No, I don't think we need it. It's not. That's not. It's not. What's going on?
I don't know what that was.
That was. That was your phone.
Oh, let me disconnect that because they'll just be having stuff come through.
Yeah. No. So what's some new current things that you have going on that you want to talk about?
I'm so happy that I was scared, right? I was scared.
I do not.
I was scared because I always tell people I don't know how to take naps.
Mm.
And your grandmother was like, it takes practice.
So you've been practicing naps.
I took a practice nap today and I set an alarm to take a nap for an hour. Although I think like the research says it should be like 30 minutes.
About 30 minutes. Do you think that more? Do you think that not knowing how to rest seriously plagues the Western culture? Like, do you think a lot of
Yes.
people truly know how to take a
Yes.
rest?
I think a lot of people do not know how to take a nap.
If you're in the comments watching, be sure to shoot a comment so we can talk to you while we're kind of in this pre-room. We want to get everybody engaged, get a chance to kind of meet people and talk to people during the comments. And even if you're watching the replay, don't be ashamed. I know you're not going to probably see this in the replay, but in the replay, don't be
That's
ashamed to
funny.
shoot a comment because hopefully we can circle back and start answering some of these questions to keep them realistic to the folks. But yeah, what do you think? Why do you think most people can't rest?
I don't know, but since I'm the producer and whatever, I gotta make sure. Yo, can you wait? Yo, I say yo. I always say yo. Can you please tag people and share? Unlike me, my son feeds off of having people here on the live. So if you can tag people, share this live out. Thank you so much for joining. We're gonna be starting on topic at 9 p.m. But for right now, if you can just tag, say hello, and tell us where you're like streaming from, and if you're on the live or the replay. You can even put that in the comment. Tonight, we might have a gift of unspeakable value for the person that brings the most people in just because I can do that. Hey Nancy, thank you for joining.
It's Nancy.
Yep. So the person that tags the most people in their comments, and simply the way you do that, you can either share to your own page or you can do the at symbol in comments and you can put people's names in there. Whoever puts the most people in there, I'm gonna send them a digital prize of an actual speakable value because as a momager, hey Sam,
I miss Samantha.
as a momager, we always try to make our kids happy. And so Austin doesn't like talking to nobody. He likes to have people on with us. So if you could please tag, share, bring some people in. And the title for tonight is what?
The value of communication. I know I talk about it.
Really?
We talk about it
Wait, you didn't put that
sometimes.
piece in there. You didn't say really.
Oh yeah, what is the value of communication really in the all caps? I did send that in the message for the title, but I think that it's just really difficult for a lot of people to grasp what does good communication feel like because you've never felt it. I wouldn't blame you for not really thinking that there's a better way.
Right. But before that, what we were talking about before, thank you so much, tagging somebody, Nancy. The thing we were talking about before we get into our topic for tonight was I was telling him I took a nap today, and normally that's because Nancy beat me up this morning. I'm kidding, but not really. Because I came in with a goal. I wanted to hey, you're in Texas. Okay, Texas. Thank you so much, Sam. Nancy, who is my Pilates instructor, this morning she I told her I had a goal. I wanted to do like this flip over thing. And so she like beat me up, but it was good, but I was tired. So it was a good exercise. You're exercising well when you can't think or multitask because normally I can divert and talk about other things. Thank y'all for tagging people. Okay. Look at this competition going on. But anyways, so I kept trying to stay awake. I was calling people, drinking lots of water, and I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna make it to 9 p.m. unless I try to take a nap. And my mom said, look at this. Sam and Nancy might have a tie here. Okay, I see y'all. I'm gonna count them up, and at the end, then I'm gonna let y'all know who tagged the most people for those who are joining late. And if you're catching on the replay, you're not able to win this prize of unspeakable value. But you were asking a question about people knowing how to rest. And so I don't think people know how to rest. And I've been doing some intentional things lately to get good rest, and it has definitely made a difference. So that makes me excited. Yo, they are tagging.
The thing I just wanted to say as far as rest, I think my two biggest things have always been for a while. You always know I love to rest. I love to take it,
You
relax.
too.
I think the two most important things for me have always been protecting my peace and protecting my rest. Because protecting my peace, I need my state of mind to focus on what's important. I can't be diverted all over the place. And protecting my like even when it comes to family drama or people drama, I try to protect my peace liberally. I try to limit what I consume is I try to protect my peace and I try to protect my rest because I recognize that I can work as hard as I want and get as much money as I want. But if I don't have my health, I can't use it.
True.
I don't want to be in my dream car with a driver. There's some cars I just want to drive myself. So
Your dream car with a drive. I don't understand what that means.
I don't want to be in my dream car not physically able to drive.
Oh,
Right?
you want the choice.
I wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to have all the money in the world and now I you know what I'm saying? I don't take care of myself and I'm losing the ability to do basic things. I can't walk for myself, but I have all the money in the world simply because, and not because of, no disorder, just because I didn't take care of myself.
Right.
I don't want that to be my future.
Okay, well, I feel like it's a collective thing, and I ain't gonna go to that tangent today, but I feel like, yeah. So rest is important, but it's 9 o'clock. It's 9:01. So let's jump into our topic for today. And our topic for today is
What is the value of communication really? So for a
really
little, I guess pre question or preamble to the question, I think a lot of times, like we were talking about in the room again, if you've seen some replays the first time, is a lot of people struggle to grasp the benefit or the tangible benefits of communication. So how does that play out in the business world? It becomes very difficult then to explain what your business is going to gain by doing communication coaching or doing effective communication coaching until you do it. And then you understand, oh, it doesn't have to be this way,
or complicated, right?
or it doesn't have to be this complicated. But before that, I think a lot of people don't understand the tangible, or we talked about KPI. See, it's
KRIs.
like a 50-50. Or the KRIs, those measurable, tangible benefits. It's very sometimes hard to convey that. So I think today on the live, I want to give people just 3 basic points or tangible understandings of how will communication affect your life, or getting better at communication affect your life for the better.
And so the reason that it's a challenge when it's a KRI is because it's qualitative. So there's 2 types of data. For those who know, I'm a nerd when it comes to data, but qualitative data is not stuff that you can actually like measure quickly, or quantitative data, which it can be, because when we go to the first point, we'll talk about how you could quantify that. But the qualitative things to me have that depth. So it's like that thing that it felt right, or it felt better, or I was happy when I walked away, or those emotional things that don't necessarily always tie to logic, but yet it does.
Right.
So I think that's the reason why when we go through our 3 points today, it's important to remind ourselves that it is a process and it takes practice. So communication is important. And thank you again for tagging everybody. We appreciate that. We hope that we get up to 10 people today. That would be just awesome. And while you go ahead and share the first thing, I'm going to do my due diligence and I'm going to tag some people as well. So if you want to give some more context of why, maybe give some context on why, look at that, we're going up to 5. Give some context on why we thought this topic was relevant for right now.
I think this topic is relevant for right now because I think that there's many stages of awareness when it comes to fixing an issue. And I think the first step, which is the hardest step, is unawareness. And I think that right now, just in communication in general, I think a lot of people are in terrible communication states or conditions because they don't think there's a better way. I had a conversation with a friend that goes to a college. I went to see my one friend to work out with him, and I got to go to his dorm and see some of my other friends from school. And one of them was talking about public speaking, and it was interesting to hear him talk about it because he was describing public speaking in a negative sense as if that was normal. To me, I don't mind public speaking. I
Right.
don't. I'll go do a keynote, and I'm gonna hopefully start recording some keynotes. I'll do a keynote anywhere. I love speaking. I don't mind it. Now, there's sometimes when I don't want to walk to the front of like, remember we used to work the streaming, that I want to walk into the middle of the other times that I get stage fright, yes. But when it comes to speaking, I never associated getting up on a podium as nervous. Like, I'm
You do
freaking
realize that
out.
that's one of the top things. Like some people would rather, I think it's the top 3 things. Public speaking is up there of
But I don't believe it has
greatest
to be that
fears.
way. And I think that a lot of people, even though you can be anxious, I don't think you should be doubtful. And that's the difference. I take it back. I've been nervous, but never doubtful. I've been nervous, like, ooh, I'm a little nervous, a lot of people watching, but never when I was up there was I like, oh, I don't know how to speak anymore. That was never what the fear was.
But some people do have that.
And
like
I think
there's some
that can be
physical, right?
fixed.
Okay.
I think when you are confident, because to this point, we talked about anxiety versus anticipation, right? Anxiety is when you are anticipating an event going negative, and anticipation when you're anticipating an event going positive. When I
Okay.
went to go give my mom prom speech,
Wow.
that was anticipation. I was excited. I'm like, this is about to
Aw.
be good, right? When I get up to do, or when I hop on a live, it's anticipation. This is going to be good. Why? Because even though I might be nervous, I'm nervous because I'm excited versus nervous because I don't want it to happen. And that's the difference,
Okay.
I think. And I think a lot of people are on the wrong side of that difference, not by choice, but not even by knowing there's the other side.
Yep. And Nancy says, I like to feel a little nervous. Yeah, I think that that's good. Then she was saying how BNI, which we got to go visit one of those. You got to go visit one of those. I used to be in one, but anyways. And then she says here, doing those commercials every week. So in BNI, you had to give like a quick commercial about yourself. You had a very short period of time to do it. So you had to like practice that message. So when it came to you, you didn't want to mess up that moment because that was your moment to shine and then have a call to action. So you really wanted to make sure you prepared for that. So that's good. Business networking. Yep, business networking international. It was good. So what I want us to do so we can stay on a flow and people can follow us when we go through our 3 topics today is let's jump right into some of the benefits to making sure that you value that communication really. I'm emphasizing the really.
Because it was in all caps.
Yes.
So it has to be emphasized. It's not even, I feel like it's like almost a must. But getting into that first point, I think the first point, it saves time. And let me explain how it saves time. Because like we said earlier, it is a skill. Think similar to working out. When you begin it, it's going to be difficult. Your body is adjusting. You have to mentally make changes in order to communicate differently. That being said, once you begin to communicate better or at a higher level, and we talked about this is actually weird, conversations that you think need to be long will feel really short, but
And
they'll be
right.
extremely effective. And I was telling my friend this, I had another friend who I was helping through some communication training, and I told him
Coaching.
communication coaching, a difficult topic or an intense topic does not require an intense conversation.
Once you have those guidelines.
Once you
And
have
those-
practiced,
right.
once you have practiced communications to the point where you can articulate yourself and you can do it quickly, an intense conversation does not need to be a 3-hour yelling match. Because we can cut all the fluff out. We can
Right,
cut
and get
all
to
the
the point.
tears. Let's cut the tears, right? Because we're communicating effectively and freely. Let's cut the yelling, right? Let's cut the rambling or pile on of just a bunch. We don't need any of that because we've worked through these things through our communication.
And I think in addition to it helping that, because if you want to write the first point of saves time, I think that especially depending on the context, or not context, but the type of relationship it is, the difficult conversations when the absolutes have been established, dude, you're going to do all kinds of things to write that. I could have wrote. Okay, he says saves time. Once some of the absolutes have been articulated, then that's one of the reason why it saves time. So for example, if I was frustrated with your dad, at the end of the day, I love him, right? So most disagreements are not going to put us in divorce court. So I think when you fight from emotion, it's almost like there's absolutes and I'm fighting to win and we're going to divorce court if this don't work out. So when you have eliminated all of that, we can get to the fundamental of what happened, what was the behavior, SBI, situation, behavior, the impact, and what is a new expectation agreement. So that's why it saves time, because we don't have to go through all of the litany of the emotions and we're leading with logic. So even with us, right? Not to get into the details, but like there was a difficult conversation. And the first time we had the conversation, it was very emotionally charged. But then we ended on some boundaries or some agreements at the end. So the next time when the agreement wasn't followed, we didn't have to go through all the backtrack. We really just had to revisit the agreement and then say, was it a good agreement? Do we need to reframe the agreement? And then we could move on. So the first conversation was an hour and a half. The second conversation was less than 10 minutes. And it was weird. It was weird.
No, it wasn't weird. It was definitely
It was weird.
different. It was one of the first times that I think, even though it was the first time we had a conversation to that level, at that level of brevity or briefness. We've had difficult conversations before.
It just
But
took a long
but
time.
not that it took a long time, but they weren't to that level of intensity. Like, that level of that topic is very important. And then, that being said, it was just a rare balance where it was a very intense topic and a very quick conversation. But it made me realize that that is possible. That is possible for everything. But to your point, even the words that we use, we're not speaking to win. This is not a competition. I'm purely speaking to understand I'm speaking to understand and to be understood. That's
And
the
then we
only
agree,
reason that
right?
if you know why that's an important distinction, because then we can establish the boundaries of we agree that we disagree, and that don't have to do anything outside this conversation. You
Right.
can't do that if it's a competition, because there has to be a winner. A lot of sports can't end in a draw. Why? Because there has to be a winner.
In order, right? There has to be a winner and there has to be a loser.
And there has to be a loser.
And Stephen Covey always talks about those win-win relationships, or seeking first to understand, then to be understood. But I think, again, specifically in those difficult conversations or repetitive conversations that you've never taken the time to frame up, how do we have this conversation when we refer back to the agreements? Because I'm going to just be honest, like, even right now, I don't know if she's watching, but like, Monique is in a relationship, right? Monique and Tariq. I think that's so cute saying it together. And they have very lengthy conversations of disagreement in the beginning. Now, because they've established some boundaries, those conversations that might have taken 3 hours, 4 hours, multiple days can be resolved in going back to the agreements. You know what I'm saying? And so but because the relationship is still relatively new, if the foundation of I love you, you love me, because I believe love is an action, I don't believe it's an emotion. If I love you and you love me, and we're saying that we've even come up with the conversation of, well, what are absolute breakdowns where we're going to separate? I think, again, I don't need to rehash that every time I'm in a conversation.
Right. And I think the better.
And I think they do. Like, honestly, it was, I'm gonna just be honest, for me, it was stressful, but I love what I'm learning of observing that, right? Like, to see it in action with a new relationship, because I feel like with established relationships, those absolutes are just unconscious agreements. Do you know what I'm saying? But I don't know that people go into them like that. Like, I think in marriage, right, there should be some things that say this should not take us to divorce court. But if they haven't learned or haven't had a communication coach to walk through how do you have conversations where they're based on agreements versus the foundations, they do turn into win loses. It does stay emotionally charged and it never gets to resolution. And how do we move forward from here? So I think what you're saying on this saves time. People have to know that if you don't have a hashtag communication coach like you, or a therapist, or whatever you're using, and you don't learn how to have those effective conversations with agreements, you could stay in the emotional state and they are exhausting. And again, I will even say with me, I keep saying Monique is the primary person, but like, me and Monique are very emotionally charged when we communicate. And that used to be our issue as well, until we came to some things. I love you, you love me. And at the end of the day, because we have a lot of similarities, we were fighting emotionally. We weren't leading with logic. So now we may not have the conversations as quickly. No, we have the conversations themselves are quickly, but we get to the meat of what it is versus all the emotional stuff that just gets into hurt feelings and unnecessary and pileups and the things that we've talked about in the past. So if you're watching this, I would love to hear, again, when we talk about this idea of saving time, does this make sense to you? Go ahead and put a comment in the chat, or if you have a question about some specifics, whether it's adults talking to young people, whether it's peers talking to each other, if it's business leaders talking to your employees, because again, in all those relationships, you have to establish those absolutes and agreement. And how do we do this in a way where they're win-win solutions? Does that make sense? So I love that. It saves time in the long run, but You got to do the hard work to set up a strong foundation.
I learned how to shoot a basketball upon that principle. My friends used to laugh at me because every time we'd be out, I'd be like, hey, how does my form look? What's going on? What's going on? Because I've understood the difference between learning how to shoot by feel and learning how to shoot because I can explain why I do what I do. And to this day, greatest distinction. I went from the worst shooter and hey, look at the camera. Look at the camera. Top two. Top two. And hey, top two. And sometimes I don't be looking like two. Let's get it. Let's get it. But because now I understood when it's emotional, I have to get into a certain state. And I do that with almost everything in my life. I try to understand it, not just feel it. Now, some things are felt, but you can understand what you're feeling even within
Look
that.
at she's like, hey. Do you agree as a basketball coach?
And I think like, but there's some players who say I know how to feel, and I always tell them, if you're going to learn how to feel it, you better really understand what you're feeling, because to that point, there's always going to be a time when your shot's not on. And these are the conversations. And the difference between having an emotional and logical is if I have to always get in a rhythm, that's the time we're talking about. Boy, it's logical, and we can say, okay, hey, I know you're not really in the conversation mood, but let's get to the meat of the conversation. That's a different scenario.
She says, I'm not sure I agree.
That's what I found. And I think that when you can, and that's what a shooting coach does. That's what a shooting coach does. That's why a shooting coach teach you how to shoot much faster. They're not telling you what to feel. They're telling you what to do.
The technique.
And they know the logical explanation for it. It took me many years to learn how to shoot. I went to a shooting coach twice, and he instantly set me like months ahead than where I would have been, because he wasn't telling me what to feel. He was telling me, you're going to look for this. This is why you're doing this. Move your feet because of this reason. And he logically broke down what I was doing to the point where next time I was like, oh man, my shot feels flat. I said, I'm holding the ball too far out. And I could explain why.
The different
and it
steps.
saved me from having to go back to, okay, well, let's see, how do I shoot again? No, I know what's wrong. And now when I'm at the gym, I make changes mid-game. Oh, I just missed that shot flat. Whoa, let me tuck my elbow a little tighter.
Oh, okay. So she said, agreed, but it becomes muscle memory of feelings. Okay. Well, I don't know the technical pieces, but to your point, I think you're both saying the same thing. And if I had to step out of a sports analogy, because I don't do sports, I remember when I used to work as an engineer, and my manager, Steve McAvoy, would always tell me the most effective engineers can break down and explain back the process to solve problems. Because engineers, that's all you do, is we're solving problems so that we can have things more efficient, more effective. They're safe. There's guiding principles. And so to your point, even when it comes to the next level of excellence, that's why people always need coaches, because it cracks me up when people think they've come to a certain level of expertise. So I remember, even though I would say I'm a pretty effective public speaker and presenter and facilitator, which all three of those are different for those of you who want to speak, facilitating, speaking, and then training are different techniques. But I joined Toastmasters. And people are like, why would you join Toastmasters? And Toastmasters, if you don't know, is an organization that helps you with public speaking. And they give you all of these different frameworks on, well, how do you do this type of speech? How do you do this? Counting your ums and your uhs, your filler words. And people would say, well, Latasha, you're going to always come in here and kill it, and we have a disadvantage. And I say, I disagree. Because just because people feel comfortable getting up in front of people speak, everybody knows, y'all been to one of those messages in church, or you've been in front of a speaker, you've been in a training session, and you're like, yo, this person is rambling. They are just rambling. You keep getting cut out. Oh no, let me make sure. If you are watching, can you let us know in the chat section if our sound is cutting out or if it's a good sound quality for you? Sometimes it is the people, like your Wi-Fi might not be strong, but sometimes it can be us. That's why we upgraded to this whole system that we got going on here. So while you're talking, I'm going to just okay, yeah, I can hear it pretty clear, but we'll see. Okay, hey Jasmine, thank you.
Hi Jasmine, how you doing?
Sometimes there is a freeze, so yeah, that might be our Wi-Fi in this area that we're in right now. I guess some stuff is happening with the electrical stuff in Cheektowaga, so they better not take us out, because we have had power, and 3 people that I know don't have power, so I hope our power stays on.
Oh wait, they're losing power.
They lost power since yesterday. Yeah.
And imagine lights just hit off. Pow.
That would be jacked up. That's okay. We got a contingency plan.
But continuing moving on, I think that is very true, right? We talk about, and even if you're going to go off of emotion, logically being able to understand how to get yourself into a calm state might just be useful. Logically understanding how to get you and your partner onto okay, I told my friend about resetting the room. Let's return to neutral. We know what neutral feels like. Let's talk from neutral right now. I know you're upset. I know I'm upset, but let's talk from neutral. And let's take a deep breath and let's remember how to get back to neutral. Even that may be useful.
She said it's driving her crazy. I'm sorry, Sam. And we love your engagement, but if it's driving you nuts, I totally understand. You could catch the replay, but then we can't hear your feedback. So I don't know if it's possible to not necessarily be on a Wi-Fi. I don't know.
Might have to go and look into that for next week. See if maybe we can.
We can't fix that.
Jeez.
We can't fix that.
I'm not fully sure, but
so the first point again, it saves time. Talk to understand, not to win. And again, being able to articulate. I think another, it's a benefit or it's a part of the process is understanding that it is a processing. She says she's not leaving. Thank you for staying. So let's shift over to the second point.
So the second point,
the third point,
or the second point of the three that we talked about, we were going to talk about, but the third on the board, because I will be writing it down, as I said it, that it protects peace. So what do I mean by protects peace? Like we were talking about in the waiting room a little bit. Again, if you ever get a chance to hop in the live a little early, get to hear a little bit of exclusive conversation. In that waiting room, we talked about protecting peace and why that's so important. I think, what is peace in a relationship? I think peace to me is when everybody we're talking about is in agreements that work. Not agreements that work for one side and the other, in agreements that work and they feel heard and validated. Right?
Right.
I want to feel, even if you don't agree, I want to feel, because we can be mad and be at, you can not agree with my point, we can be at peace. We can be like, oh, yes, we don't agree. I do it all the time with two friends of mine, Will and Jordan. I had them on a diverse discussion, and I used to do those. And we talked about that. We disagree. It's not like we're three friends of the same mind. We disagree all the time, but we disagree and we move on because we feel comfortable in the way that we communicate that we can disagree and move on. But when you don't, when you have gaps such as, oh, we can't talk because it'll get too emotional, you can never get to that point where you feel like you can articulate yourself or make agreements that work for both of you, you'll never have peace. And I think that even within the point of how can we begin to have conversations? How do I begin a conversation? Even when you learn those skills, they allow you to have the conversations that you need to have for your peace, because it's not peace if only one side is at peace.
Yeah. And I think too, when you talk about that, protects peace is, again, as adults, it's important to understand that the deepest relationships, you won't be the same and you won't always agree, because God made us all different. He made us all different. And so if we are consistently flexing and not like bending, like doing the dance, I think that, again, it doesn't feel peaceful. See, I said again twice in like 30 seconds. It doesn't feel peaceful because one person feels like they're flexing and they're not at peace. And actually they might say, oh my goodness, when we talked about the whole idea of when your phone rings and you see a certain name on your caller ID, because you haven't established good ways to communicate with that person, there's a whole thing that comes in your head and you may not feel peace. But to protect your peace, you may sometimes, because you can't change anybody but yourself. So you may have to put some boundaries, and I'm going to say that word a lot, and how do you protect your peace as a matter of your communication. So for me, if I'm really focused and I have a lot going on, I will try to let people who are closest to me that I speak to the most say, I'm taking a 20-second timeout. I won't be available for a couple days, because they know me enough to know I ain't mad at you. I'm just processing something, and that's how I'm wired. And I think that helps to protect that peace. But there was a long time when I didn't understand effective communication, and I was like a Pavlovian response to if they called, if they emailed, if they text, I had to respond. And that wasn't protecting peace. It wasn't establishing those boundaries, again, to save that time. And when I saw them, it didn't feel peaceful. So that's one piece of it for me is, again, going back to point number one, and taking it to the next level of preserving that peace.
And I want to touch on point number 2, talking to understand, not to win. I think, in my opinion, that's the most important thing to protecting your peace, because you have to understand, like you said, I don't care if you agree with me.
I hate when you say the word I don't care.
I'm not bothered if you don't agree with me. That's not, because that's not what we're conversating about. I just want to understand why you do the way you do. And even what you're talking about, understanding that, yes, sometimes you're not going to agree with the fact that I need to take time, but I do. And if you want this relationship to happen, I need this time. To me, understanding that this next conversation, they may not be happy that the fact that I didn't answer the phone, but that's okay. Then the situation doesn't matter, because
Right.
I understand that I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to change what you think. And as a parent, I think that would be I'm not going to speak on parenthood.
No, that's a good, but I think
parent,
that's real
see how
though.
that could be useful to understand that even with your kid, are you trying to win your kid to see your point of view, or are you just trying to understand? Because there's a difference. Do you want your kid to align with, or do you just want your kid to be able to express themselves freely? Because like we said, if you'd have that, there's some things that I've said that you probably haven't liked.
But I think, to the point that you're making, is understanding your child, that to protect that peace. And this gets really sticky because people are wired differently, right? You go to the Myers-Briggs assessment, and there's introverts, extroverts, how you process information, how you take in the world, how you respond to the world. All of those 4 letters mean something. And so if I'm considered an extrovert, but my extroversion is through music or sounds or environments. It's not necessarily through talking to somebody.
Right.
And so if there's a heated moment, because I know I'm a direct communicator, if I don't take the time to process, I know I could say some words I can't recover from. You hurt yourself?
I just bumped my elbow on the face. So y'all listening.
That's funny. I might say some stuff that I can't recover from. So for me, in order to protect peace, even though it may seem awkward, like someone made a joke about it. My friend Olivia had made a joke about it. She was like, oh, she took a couple of days to talk about something. And it's because I needed some time to process. And it's so interesting because even, I know y'all, here we go to the Bible, right? It'll say, do not go to sleep angry. I'm paraphrasing. And I don't know if that's a good thing, because sometimes to protect peace, we need to shut our mouths and we need to process that out. If you are an external processor, you might need to have a confident, a therapist, or somebody, a communication coach, or somebody to know. But as parents, I think it gets sticky because depending on what generation you grew up in, like that would not have been acceptable for me with my mom. Anybody in there Gen X and got a boomer for a parent, it would not have been okay if my mother told me to do something and I felt like I needed some time to process, to protect the peace, to just say I need a timeout. And I think, as much as I get frustrated sometimes when I say we were not always together, I think in our house, we respect those boundaries.
Very much so. And I think, to your point, because of the way that a lot of people are raised, we talk about don't know there's another way. I think a lot of people don't think that that's okay to say, hey, we can't talk right now for the sake of this relationship. I'm not able to convey the way that I need to. And this is not going to be an effective conversation. I think that's a part of setting boundaries, is a big part of communication that a lot of people aren't comfortable with. But like we talk about, and if you want to get real picky, whose job is it to protect your peace?
It's my job, right?
That's your job. You can't expect it. I always talk about the words that we use. Protect your peace. Take your peace. Do not wait for it to be given out.
You're getting real aggressive with the peace.
I think a lot of times, society, we end up doing things because we think that's the way things should be. But the way things should be does not mean the way things work.
What you need,
or what's
you
effective.
need, right?
That's not the world we even live in anymore. The world we live in now, don't walk up to a stranger on the street and just start talking crazy. You will get put in your place because they're going to protect their peace. And my question always is, if you'll give people the respect in the room to protect their peace, why do a lot of people never give themselves the room to protect theirs? And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize.
That's a moment. It is, because I feel like social accepted norms and what that looks like when that child needs that space, and parents are emotionally charged because of what they're believing. One of the things that I've been doing a lot more, I think I've always done this. No, not always, but for a long time I did this, is I try not to judge what is happening. I try to put it in context. And let's see what Nancy's saying here. She said, one time a friend told me that when we argue or have different perspectives and I get quiet, he knows I'm thinking. He will ask, am I ready? I love that. When he says that, he helped me. I didn't even know that that was what was going on. So I started to tell people that. I love that. Yeah, that's important for people to pick up on the nonverbal cues of what's happening. It doesn't mean, because see, some people who were not that, didn't have that much emotional intelligence, and I'm not saying that as a good and bad, but the where they were on the range of emotional intelligence, they wouldn't pick up on that nonverbal cue. So it takes somebody to really love you to say, I recognize the pattern, like you always talk about this pattern that you're getting quiet, which means I need to say, I need to not jump to an assumption with that. And that's the thing. To protect your peace, you have to use the verbal, nonverbal cues of really taking the time to use the platinum rule. What do they need? Not what do I need? Because you might, for example, with me, I like resolutions quick. And where I would get frustrated is I want that resolution quick on my terms. And so I would say, well, we can walk away from this conversation to protect the peace of the moment. But when you coming back to me? You coming back in an hour, a day, or 2 hours? And where I wasn't good before is letting that happen organically, because as a person who's driven by deadlines and timelines, I would say this is the time frame in which we need to pick that back up. And what I had to learn was I can't put a time frame on it, just an expectation that you will give me a cue when it's ready to recircle and have that conversation.
And even going back into what we were just talking about with trust, people are going to circle back. Protecting peace does not mean happiness. Peace does not mean and even what you're talking about with the Bible scripture, I agree. Don't go to bed angry. Didn't say don't go to bed hurt, but you got to understand that anger while you're awake, because anger is not a real emotion, really. It's either hurt, embarrassment, fear. Anger a lot of times is not typically rage. Rage is a thing, right? Rage when you're just, oh man, I'm just lit up with just anger. But even that, a lot of times, what does that typically end up as?
It's connected with hurt.
It's
right?
Hurt, or it's embarrassment, or it's fear. So I think to that point, no, don't go to bed angry. And recognize that anger has no place in peace. But sometimes you can be peaceful and be hurt. If you lose a loved one, you can be peaceful and understand they're in a better place and still be hurt. That's peace. And I think a lot of people think that peace is this I'm I'm super calm. It's not. No, you could be at peace and
still be hurt.
And still be. People sleep during sea storms. People sleep during sea storms. It doesn't have to be pretty for you to have peace. Right. But sometimes I think we get so enwrapped in what we think peace is. So even to that point, letting that happen organically, but also understand that to a point, right? Ooh, I don't know if this person's ever going to get back around, but I can't have this on my mind. This just may not be a friendship we can continue for the peace of both of us. That would be the peace.
Our season has
right people, wrong time. People don't like that phrase, but I had to get comfortable with it because it's a lot of times it is right people, wrong time. Well, there's a lot of good people on the earth, but are they your good people you need to be around? Not always. And to that point,
but that's a sticky piece too, right? When we say wrong people, right people, wrong time. But I think we even need to challenge that sometimes, because we will sometimes, I think what happens, because people are naturally don't necessarily attract to change. It could be the right person, right time, but it's stretching you to be uncomfortable and face some things if a person chooses to protect their peace. So one of the things that I laugh at is like, you cannot argue with yourself.
Right.
And so if a person chooses to protect their peace and they're not arguing with you, that doesn't mean right person, wrong time. God might be saying, no, this is the right person and this is the right time. Because if you're saying you want to go to this next level, you need to learn that just because they're protecting their peace, it has nothing to do with you. Nothing. It's just a different way. So I feel like sometimes what we'll do is when someone is in a space, especially when one of the things I think God in his grace, because he knows us, is there'll be multiple people of a certain type of personality that you'll be attracting in your life. And you'll be like, oh, and this is a word for me. Like I'm speaking to myself as I'm talking to you. Like I was taking my nap and I woke up and I said, Latasha, Your mind is different about some circumstances. You need to go back into your, like, what does the promise of God say about this situation? Because you will not have peace. You will not have peace if you keep saying to yourself, you know what, Latasha, every day I'm walking up with that pattern over and over of the wrong mindset. So I do agree. What are you
Oh,
saying?
sorry, I thought this was a stylus. And
It's not a stylus.
I was
It's an
just slightly
eraser. That
testing it
pen
while I was
erases.
listening.
That's a dope pen.
Wow,
It's a
that's-
dope. I
yeah,
love
that's real
those pens.
cool.
I got that from an accountant. He uses that pen because he can erase. Accountants usually use pencils. But anyways, so what I'm saying is, I think that when we see certain types of personalities around us, or certain circumstances keep coming around us as a theme, and they'll say you're the common denominator. Maybe you are, but it doesn't mean all those people are wrong. It could just simply mean that, that's funny, you had to test the pen. It could simply mean that God is stretching you to something different. So don't reject that and say, I'm protecting my peace. I'm going to give an example for myself. The way I used to protect my peace, and anybody who knows me knows this is true about me. I am the cut off queen.
Tough. Ghost. She's a ghost legend.
There is a person right now. I have not talked to them. I would have to go back at least 12 years.
See, I feel like the fact you know that is kind of.
I think it's longer than that. I'm
giving. So you don't know the time. Like, you haven't
no, I think it's longer than that. I'm gonna look in the Rolodex of the photos, but I feel like it's longer than that, because in my mind, protecting my peace in the past meant I'm gonna cut you off and I'm gonna get rid of it. Because it's disease, like that's a disease. Like, I just want it away, and I will cut them. I was the cut off queen. I will forget your name. This one, I remember her name. I will forget your name, and if I see you,
what's her name? What's her name? Drop it on the
I ain't gonna say her name, but if I see you, I won't even remember you because I have cut you out and taken you out of my mind. That was me, and I would wear that as a badge of honor.
I used to do the same thing, and I remember the first year I made a change. I was in Cape Cod with Will Kelly. And when I still had social media, and I posted on Snapchat, it was the start of like a new year, I think. And I said, I hate has no place in my heart. I have no grudges against anybody on this earth. You are forgiven. And I hope you can find in your heart to forgive me. And that's what I said. And I was a new leaf I turned over.
Right.
And I just said, I don't have any grudges. That has no place in peace to me, in my opinion. And
2011. How long ago was that?
That's 12 years ago.
Yeah. 12 years.
I don't think that a lot of people are even comfortable with that. I have a lot of people who I'm not too cool with, but I mean, I still have to ultimately respect them, right? And I still have to protect my peace to say, like, I may not be cool with you, but peace sometimes, like you said, isn't on your terms. And sometimes for certain people, if I'm with my friends and you come around, I can't really.
Oh, she said, so what? So protecting my peace now, what does it mean to me now? It means to me now that I look at the terms of my relationship with that person, and I ask myself, am I being lazy and I just don't want to do the work? Or is this really something that God has placed in my life? And I will pray about that, and I will ask God. And even with the person I haven't spoke to in 12 years, I feel like I made that decision to protect my peace because they were messy. They were messy, and they played games to the extreme that that's just not a good way to live life. Like, they would play messy, like they were messy with their relationships. They were messy with our relationship because they would play on that. Yep. And I have forgiven that person. Like, there's not any hate in my heart for that person. If they called and said that they needed me for something, and God was like leading me to say, I want to help that person, or if I saw them, I would be cordial with them. But they will never get to the place of closeness that we were before, because I feel like they took advantage. Now, if God told me something different, then yes, I would do that. But for right now, I think that I led with logic in that. And that was a hard decision in the beginning. But for me right now, protecting my peace is not cutting you off and run away, because it was so bad. And I'm just being honest about myself. If I'm consistently trying in a relationship, no matter how close it was, I still could revert back to protecting my peace is cutting you off, because I can't change you. All I can do is change myself. And protecting my peace is, if I stay in there, it's too emotional, it's too messy, it's too many emotions for me. But what I've learned now is I ask myself, ultimately, Has God placed that person in my life? And is it just a misunderstanding and we haven't done the work? So that's what protecting my peace means for me today. But I agree with you, Jasmine. I do think that there could be some times that it's to you. I don't even think it's the right person. It's just the wrong person, wrong time, or we've outgrown that moment and it no longer works.
I think the way that I describe keeping my peace is I say, what is the best thing I can do for me and that person in an authentic way? That's my little thing. So sometimes, perfect example, if I know I want to text somebody and it's late and I probably shouldn't create that expectation for that's okay, I'll be like, oh, guess I can't text them. I want to, but for the sake of me, them, in an authentic way, if I was truly honest with myself, I know I probably shouldn't. And so
because what do you mean? You feel like it could put a different expectation on a relationship if you text them late at night.
That's not what I want to do. I want to make sure those boundaries are important to me. And I know in the long run, those and I guess that's a different live. Boundaries, very important. Sleep, you need some time away. You need some time away from people, no matter how close you are, even if they're a significant other. You need some time away. 24/7 does not work.
It's not realistic. Even Jesus took time to steal away from the disciples. He did.
Right. You got to take time away. You do. And so to that point, I think that, that's older. But to the topic of boundaries and protecting peace, I knew for that sake, in the most authentic way possible, the best thing I could do was go to sleep. And I did. And that's what I try to do all the time in all my actions and decisions when it comes down to a relationship. I say, okay, whether it be through communication or, like you said, not communicating, what should I do here to best put us in the best situation to be authentically ourselves and win?
Right.
And that's kind of how I look at it. So jumping, and I want to jump to the next
point. That transitions us to the next point, actually.
That's the next point. Doing what's best for everybody involved. I think the last thing that communication does tangibly is it shows respect. I think that to that point, respect is being transparent with somebody. It's not deceit. To me, is disrespectful. To me, deceit is disrespectful.
But let's talk about this. Transparency, there also has to be some wisdom used behind transparency.
Meaning?
I will give you some examples. So, being transparent is transparent on your part of that without putting context on the other person. So what I'm saying is, like, if I choose to be transparent, right, about a situation or a scenario, when I speak about that transparency, or even if I'm having that, my transparency has to be my experiences and my feeling and my stuff that's going with that. Transparency, I think, can get messy when I'm being transparent, making assumptive things about what you're doing emotionally as I'm being transparent.
That's not transparency, though. I think that's accusation.
That's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying to you. I'm saying that I don't think that that's being transparent.
But that's not effective. But we're talking about what happens when you learn effective communication, and what you're going to learn is that to that point, you don't do that. You don't use certain words. You don't accuse. You don't accuse. You speak from what you know. We talk
I think
about
we're saying the same thing.
No, we are. But I'm saying. But you're saying. You were talking about it from like, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the question is implying that you're learning that what is the benefit of learning how to communicate effectively? Yes. That's the implied, I guess, part of the class. That's why I was confused. But to your point, yes. And that's showing respect is not accusing. And to your point,
that's hard when you think you know people. Because people are predictable. But you can't do the predictions when you're trying to, because it could come off as accusatory, and that's not showing respect.
It's not. And learning the difference between that, I think, is very difficult, but that's what kind of falls into that idea of communicating well. I think also respect is respecting yourself. I always talk about part of communication a lot of people don't think of, or we do, right? Self-talk. But a lot of coaches or consults may not think of is how are you talking to yourself? Because that's
without your words, though.
Without your words, because
because I feel like the biggest, loudest self-talk happens in your mind. It's not what you're saying. It's that self-talk. Like you are literally having a whole conversation in your head that has nothing to do with what's going on right there.
And even if you are, there's a way to Well, no, you probably should know if you're listening, active listening. But even if you are, there's a way to navigate that in an effective way and an ineffective way. What I will tell you is not navigating it at all is disrespectful to yourself, I feel. Because you owe yourself the respect to put yourself on the best situation to have an effective effective communication, even just for yourself, right? Going back to protecting your peace. You can't protect your peace if you can't communicate. So by not communicating and not having conversations, to me, I feel like that's disrespecting yourself, because you know that's important to respectfully and be able to express yourself. You talk about respecting yourself as doing the best for you, right? Oh, you should respect yourself more. When people say that, they're saying do better for yourself. And to me, not working on your communication is not bettering yourself or not allowing yourself to be better. And that in itself means it's disrespectful to me.
But why do you think, and I really want to hear your perspective, why do you think, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but I think we need to make it plain. Why do you think that it is so hard for people to put self-respect at a high, as a high priority?
Why I think it's hard for people to put self-respect at a high priority? Because I think a lot of people don't make it a priority. They think they do, but they don't. They think because I think a lot of people don't understand what respect is.
What's respect? Put some respect on my name.
I think when we talk about transparency and respect, I think it's respectful to authentically communicate. Someone, like I said, I don't think it's respectful to suppress your feelings. I think a lot of people, when they think of respect, they think of appeasement. I think those are two different things. I can grab it. I think appeasement is when, respect is just trying to do everything you want. But to me, real respect is saying, okay, I'm following you and I understand why you're asking that, but I don't, in this context, right, there's always times, but I'm saying to say, I don't agree. And I don't think not agreeing or saying taking things that you need for yourself is disrespectful. Like to what we were talking about, saying, hey, I don't know if I can communicate right now. I don't think that's disrespectful. I think that's honest. I think that's more respect to say, hey, I want this to be good. I want this to be a fair chance for us to communicate fairly. And right now, that's not that.
Hey, Vanessa.
And I respect you enough to have to step away. I think that's a level of respect a lot of people don't give themselves or others.
But that goes back all the way to point one. And the reason why, I'm sorry, reason two, talk to understand. Because I think that, again, when it comes to that respect, the respect portion, you then do have to dabble into those emotions. And the reason I say that is because I know I'm going back to a conversation we had. And I said, this word triggers me. And you're asking me, why does that word trigger you? And I'm like, because this is how I define it next to these behaviors. And you're like, well, that's not what that word means. But that's what that word meant to me. And so for me to respect myself, I needed to do the long explanation. Hey, Vanessa, again, if you didn't hear me say it the first time, and girl, you look like you had fun at Mardi Gras. I was like, is that a yearly thing that you do? But you look like you had a good time. Anyways, sidebar. But anyways, I think that when you're trying to do the self-respect, those are the long conversations that make you have to go back to all these other things. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean? And that's the painful part that, eventually it could save time. But I can tell you for a fact, there's people whose names and pictures are popping up in my brain that stay on the emotions where they don't respect themselves enough to articulate something, to reteach people how to treat them when it comes to communication.
Right. I mean, and reteaching is hard. It
is really hard.
It's very uncomfortable. And we talk about, like we said, and going back to the first point, saves time. It does eventually. Reteach people how to treat you is a little lengthy process. But to that point, when you get to the end of that process and you guys now understand the new bonds of what you guys officiate that relationship on, you feel like this person just understands me. No, you explained yourself. And that's the difference.
Right.
A thing that people should recognize. Talk about, I want someone that just clicks with me. Okay, well, maybe explain yourself a little bit better, because some people may have what you need. But if you don't explain your needs, someone's not going to. I'm not always going to.
You can't be a psychic.
I'm not a psychic, and that was really hard for me to realize as a communication coach. It's not fair to expect someone to read my mind. If I want this to be better, I have to make it easier for it to be better.
Why are we hit that bomb? That's one of them. You know why? Because I remember this actually was a breakdown in our family, and it was me. And y'all were like, yo, mom, how will we know that you were not okay? You were like, because I'm like, how could y'all not know I was not okay? And y'all all were like, because you looked okay to us. And that's because I do really well under stressful situations with staying like calm. And y'all was like, we didn't even know anything was wrong. How would we have known? So when everybody treats, so this is the thing, an analogy that my one coach worked with me on, and I would draw the picture, but I don't know how to draw it the right way. And he's saying, like, if somebody is like, you're on a speedboat and someone's on a jet ski, and you decide that you want to try a new approach for yourself. So one of the things is for me, when I turned 50, I recognized all kids were over 18. And I was like, my role has shifted. But the problem is, I didn't inform all of the people that were involved that my role has shifted. And so, like, the speedboat goes and it makes a turn, but the jet skis are back here. And either they can organically follow you because it will, or they could be like, we do not know where the boat is going because we thought we were still going straight. And now all the waves that happen on that turn that gets really bumpy, and if it turns too quickly, the skier can fall.
Right.
He writing a whole stuff on this board. But as we're going to talk about this, yes, it's a crash and burn because you've changed, and I can't tell you how many times, specifically with the kids, that they've all said, "Have a good day at work." Did you just do the peace out, the Black Power? What's that all about? But anyways, but I can't tell you how many times they said, "Well, we didn't know that the playbook had changed." Because I'm like, there's things I'm not going to worry about no more. You're all adults. What you make decisions on in these particular areas have nothing to do with me.
And if you don't want to, and what do people probably on boats do when they're about to turn? Signal. Hey,
Right.
you're about to. If you want to keep those people on the jet ski, you want to avoid those crashes, be understood by explaining. Hey, we're going right, and either you can into this, and it's not an ultimatum. It's I'm going right for me. So either you can continue to follow this boat, and we can continue to talk, or you're gonna have to just let go of the, you're gonna have to let go of the rope and just keep going straight. And that is okay, because sometimes you have to understand that it's not your job to win. And as much sometimes you want friends, you don't get to force people to be your friends.
Or as parents, protect, right? So like our last family vacation, we went on a cruise, we had 2 different rooms. I'm like, I know y'all gonna do some stuff that I don't even want to know about. Real talk.
Right.
And so y'all gonna be in another room. And we gonna enjoy our vacation and hang out like grown people. And for a lot of times we were together, but there were times where we're like, y'all doing y'all, we doing us. Don't knock on the door. I'm kidding. Real talk. Don't knock on the door. But my point was, I think that like that was the first time we took an adult vacation.
Right. That it was a very distinct, and I talked about that. We went on 2 cruises, and the first one, okay. The second one, it was very different being, oh, would you like to do something with us, or we're going to do something. When the option was there to say you can come or you can do whatever you want on your own, that was like crazy. It wasn't crazy, it was weird. It was weird for the first time.
Right.
Being able to say like, oh wow, I can. But the good thing was, even when we're talking about, you guys, you explained that, and even though you may have not felt like you did, or I believe you did, we explained it.
We were like, we're going on vacation, but
you guys made it easy to understand that. No, if you don't want to come with us, you don't have to. But you explain that, and so then when I got on the boat, I wasn't just staying still. Like, what are we doing? I was able to say, okay, I'm going to go do this, and then I was able to enjoy myself, and by having that authentic communication to say, hey, make smart decisions, but you can ultimately do what you want. That helped us then protect. I'm not gonna say everybody's peace are protected, but it helped me protect my peace because it allowed me to align myself within what I already know is successful for both of us.
But there are so many parents, I promise you, that, or even adults in general. That's why me and Martin, we don't travel with everybody. Like we went on a cruise with this group from a church, like a cruise with them, and I loved it because they were like that too. Like, we can hang out with y'all. What she said? Yeah, that's what he's saying. It was the best vacation. It was because
it was second. Number 2.
Number 2. What was number 1?
I'll say number 1 was probably, and this isn't no disrespect, Number one was probably getting to go to
Cape Cod.
Seattle.
Oh, Seattle with your dad.
See, that was a very interesting vacation. It was the first. That was a very fun vacation.
Because it was you and your dad.
It was me and dad, and I got to see family I didn't get to see all the time. And that was just, and I was old enough where like, and it was cool. I got to see a lot of new things. I think it was like the whole West Coast. It was very interesting. But say your point, continue.
No, but I think that parents and even leaders and managers, like you train your staff and then they get to the point where they're self-sufficient and you're like, wait, what? You don't need me? That's why you hired them. And I think as adults, this is a hard thing when a certain dynamic has happened in your family and then you have to reestablish like whatever. So what that means for me is like that's the way we take vacations moving forward. And I know the dynamics are going to change even more because now people are dating people and all of those things. And I'm just of the rule of thumb that I'm like, they're adults that we're traveling with. These are not my kids. And I'm like, oh, I got to know every moment. Like, it's just not, even when we were in Miami.
Can I ask you a question as a kid?
Funny.
As a younger person, and this is maybe a selfish question because maybe I'm curious. How do you facilitate that conversation of, and it always simply forms out of, you know, I'm not a kid anymore. Like, I'm not a kid anymore. Treat me like a kid. How do we frame that conversation? Or maybe it's not even the kid's job, because to that point, there's also levels, right? You can be ready to signal. You could be saying, you know, signal right, but your parents know that's not the place in the water you're at right now. How do we facilitate that without overstepping our role as a younger person? How do I get to that point if I'm not there yet with my adults?
Well, I think for our family, it was established before you were 18. So let me back up some. So like in grammar school, because this is the way I explained it, and this is just the way we parented. In grammar school, me and your dad were very involved in school. We did a lot of stuff. Middle school, we backed up a bit. I think it was more your dad than me because I was traveling and I was starting to give the memo. In high school, to me, was the training grounds where we didn't have curfews. Y'all didn't have curfews, although my daughters will disagree. But they didn't really have curfews.
I was like, that's a little young.
They didn't. They didn't have curfews. And when it came to school, I'm like, I would tell all the teachers, y'all don't want to see me. Because if you see me, something is wrong that my kid could not work out. So we knew as parents that we had raised kids that can solve problems. You could figure it out. And I think that's part of the stuff as parents too. Like if you've been a helicopter parent, it's really hard for you to trust your kids because they've never been in situations where they've had to figure stuff out or think. So for us, I'm like, whatever scenario it is, you know, we had things like WhatsApp or whatever like that we could communicate. And I'm like, but for the most part, y'all can figure it out.
So maybe this is the strategy, because maybe this is the strategy you're saying, but you're not saying. As a younger person, the way that I got to that point was because I had A's forever, which sounds crazy to say. Had A's forever. Always had A's. So to that point,
but it wasn't always the grades, though. It wasn't always just the grades.
I'm not saying it's the grades. I'm saying I demonstrated that I demonstrated that I could handle the responsibility I was given to be given more. Right. I think that's the issue a lot of parents have. I feel like if you're having the conversation of I'm growing, treat me like a kid, maybe you need to turn around and say I might be acting like a kid, because even though we didn't have curfews, you didn't have to worry about Austin getting on the stage. That was understood that I was going to graduate. You don't have to worry Austin bringing home bad grades. When you check my report card, there was no fear. Matter of fact, I was sending it to the family group chat to show you guys, because you understood that when I failed a test, I was sad for me. So maybe as a young person, the way that you facilitate this conversation is handle what you have.
Handle your responsibilities of where you are. Right.
And then when you're ready to move on, you can say, hey, I'm doing good with what I've been given and I desire more. Can we get to that point? Mom, I've been doing good with everything in school, but I want some more money in my pockets. Can I now get a job? No, I don't know if that's the ask.
Well, but I think that it goes back to it's the grades, and it's a two-way street, because it takes a lot of courage. And we talked about this last week. With so much data being on the internet, it takes a lot of courage for a parent to say, I'm going to give you a great example, because me and your dad used to get into it. I'm like, they need to have their phones. He was like, we didn't have phones. He's like, if something happens, if a kid did something where they lost their phone privileges, he's like, they can borrow one of their friends' phones, or guess what? They can go to the office and call. But they don't need a phone. And in my head, I'm like, what? Ah! And he was right. Y'all didn't need a phone. If your
Right.
phone privileges were taken away and you needed to call us about something, you would do what you had to do. And I think, to Sam's point, nowadays you have parents, I don't want to say living vicariously, but and let me speak specifically to the believers. We are acting as if we don't recognize our kids aren't ours in the first place. God made us managers and conduits of birthing something, but like at the end of the day, you're his. So whatever is going to happen to that child, like, God is allowing it. Now, can kids do things that make you feel like whatever? But you have to ask your kid self, if your kid is acting out in a way you can't trust, check yourself. Why are they acting out? Do they want your attention? Are they acting out because you've never allowed them to make a decision? Are they acting out because you've never had them figure something out? Well, parents, like, that's your stuff. It really ain't even a kid. And so now it comes to the level, like, I was cracking up when the oldest went away to college and she's like, these kids don't even know how to wash clothes. What? Y'all been washing clothes since 10.
Yeah, no, that when we found out, I was like, man, this is not fun. But it's a part of life, and it's been
Right. And I think even figuring things out, and I can remember times, like one example that I have is one time y'all were young. You had to be real young. And your dad dropped Olivia and Monique off at a Bible study at the church. And then he left. Now I'm in Maryland. And all they had at the time, they didn't even have phones. They had iPod touches. And they're texting me, Dad left, Dad left us at church and nobody's here. So from a young age, y'all learned how to think and figure stuff out. So like right now, I can trust, even as y'all have evolved to adults, and I was nervous at certain things. Now, I'm not saying I don't have Life 360, but even with Life 360, I think they thought in the beginning the reason we had Life 360 was because I wanted to track everywhere you go. Nope, I just want to know the dot moves. Now, if you're in an area and I'm like, yo, you're not in the best area, but like after I give you that note, I'm going to sleep.
no, yeah. I'll be I'll come in. Oh, my mom is KO'd on the couch. Not even. And I think to that point though, how do we get there? I first have to demonstrate that no matter if I am there, I'm going to make it back. And I couldn't ask to stay out all night if I couldn't trust that I'm gonna know, all right, it's time for me to go home. You know what I'm saying? I had to demonstrate that first. So maybe as a parent, how you get there with your kid, or as a kid, to get there with your parents, you first have to say, okay, what are our agreements that I need to be hitting? What are my responsibilities? And am I hitting them? And can I handle more? Like, it sounds like, oh, you can't make, maturity black and white, but it is.
But it is.
I'm doing this.
But you got to recognize from a parent, the reason that's so hard for some parents is because they're holding on to their kids like possessions, and time slips away. They're not being real about celebrating the moment. So for example, when you were a freshman in high school, I had a narrative in my head, and me and Martin had a narrative in our head. We're going to be empty nesters in 4 years. Like that's the plan. Like that's the mental model we were preparing for. Now, Jeez. I know that there's like boomerang kids, or kids might stay longer, but at the end of the day, right now, and I ain't trying to be funny, I'm doing real talk right now. Right now, you're on a gap year, but I don't see you as a kid I have responsibility for. You're an adult that lives in this house.
No cap.
I
bought groceries today too. Come on now.
Right. So like at times I'll be like, okay, Martin, I got to make sure my husband has dinner every day. I'm just being honest. I make sure my husband has dinner every day. But if you're not here and you don't respond to the text when I'm saying I'm ordering something or I'm making something, you will come home and there is nothing for you.
It happens. It does happen. Or I'll say certain times, like I'll be like, oh man, I need something. And I'll just be like, but my first thought is never, oh, let me ask my parents. Always like, okay, what can I do to get this? Because to that point, the boundaries at which we have placed this relationship is, like you said, I am an adult in this house. And to that point as well, because I am an adult, my success is dependent on me.
Right.
If I'm not successful, that's on me. But I first, to give me that trust, what was first necessary? Those spelling tests in third grade were necessary.
Right.
Those spelling tests, those multiplication tables in middle school were necessary. And then in high school, those grades were necessary to prove that my success was something that I was not only in tune with, but trying to push forward.
And I think for a long time, and I think you would agree, and anybody who knows me would say, I would always say, every choice we make in life has a consequence. Now, granted, you're seeing it from this perspective. Let me give you some insight. But now at 18, I recognize sometimes y'all gonna have to bump your head. And that's a new lesson. Cause those bump your heads in high school, in our experience, were not some of the things that some of my friends have experienced. But I think it's because, and I don't even know how I got to this way. I think that me and your dad both are in agreement of like y'all gonna be all right. Like we
Right.
raise thinkers, y'all gonna be all right. And again, the reason why I say it's not necessarily the grades is because everybody in the house didn't have A's, but there were other things that showed us I could trust that y'all could figure it out.
Let me rephrase. It's not the A's, it's what the A's represented, because
Right.
it wasn't A's of, oh, so you need to sit down and do your homework. When I got to high school,
Nah, I don't
out
even
in
know your
middle
teachers'
school,
names.
we stopped doing homework at the table in middle school. If even that, it was the old house when we started doing homework at the table. We didn't do homework at the table here.
Nah.
We didn't. So that's what I'm saying with the A's represented, because I'm saying that for me, for every kid, that KRI looks different, right? For me,
Right.
it was grades. But for like Monique's may have not been grades, but I know Monique was doing things that I couldn't do.
Right, like
Monique was
she was
making
in
videos.
musicals.
Monique was doing musicals. She was doing things to prove that for her success, she was in the hot seat. Olivia was doing things to prove that for her success, she was in the hot seat. And to that point, those grades for me signified that at the end of the day, with the response that you're giving me, because the ultimate responsibility as a parent, I feel like, is to raise a kid that can be successful on their own.
Right. And I think y'all also knew, like, yeah, me and your dad parented differently, but it would be simple things like the car will be at the school at 2:27.
Oh, yo.
If you not at the door at 2:27, your dad was like, you would see it going down the street. You like, daddy left me and he ain't coming back. No, he's not.
Yo, seeing the car. Yo, it was like, but I didn't start with the car. You know what it started with? The playground. It was, we're about to go. Hurry up. And when you see the family run into the car, it was like, okay, and that was the first level of responsibility.
Right.
Do I have to come and get you? Or can you handle getting to the car?
Hey, Michelle,
then what's the next level? Okay, well, if I don't got to come and get you, can I wait outside the school? Or, you know what I'm saying? That was middle school. Then it became, can you get home at a reasonable time on your own? And now it's, can you get home safe on your own? Regardless, can you make the decision to come home? Do I now control the time that I come home? My curfew is self-imposed. And
I think it's crazy because the thing that's so funny to me is like parents who have these curfews for kids, I die laughing because I'm like, I've never had that worry. Like, I think it's worse when you have to choose it for yourself because you're like, at what point am I pushing it too far? And so we've never had, like, I can't remember a time, like, I might say, I know, like, if they were in relationships and they were at somebody's house, I'm like, well, is their family okay with you being there at that time? And they're like, oh, yeah, the family does this. And I'm like, okay. So I had to leave that alone. Or is the family okay with you being there all the time? Okay. But I feel like at the end of the day, the judgment time, y'all had to do that. And that's just like you said, it'd be like, okay. But like I said, I don't know if it's God or whatever. I think the other thing that I had to establish with them is I was like, your dad works midnights. And when I go to sleep, don't call because I won't wake up.
Yeah.
Like if you're locked out the house or you in some trouble, you're gonna have to figure that out. And one of my kids had to figure that out. They thought I was playing. I'm like, when I go to sleep, you are not waking me up.
And to that point, we do. And that is, like we said, that was what you had to put in place to not be a helicopter parent, to protect the peace of the house. Yeah, because it all makes sense. It all wrapped. You had to do that to protect the peace of the house.
Right. And again, I do have to put these caveats in. Again, not that Martin and I were perfect parents. We thank God we had good kids because y'all weren't wilding out either. And I don't know if y'all weren't wilding out because you didn't have to, because y'all always had, like, I think more freedom than a lot of people did. But it worked for us because I feel like y'all sneak factor didn't have to be high. Like if y'all chose to sneak, y'all chose to sneak. But you didn't have to sneak.
I think if I could break it down, because to your point, there are a lot of blessings that I had, a lot of friends that I met. I think it was a blessing that we stumbled upon this, but I think that is something that can be brought into a household. Does that make sense?
Right.
I think we got lucky. I had a lot of I think I had a lot of friends that I met who were like, also, even if you guys were staying home, that were like, well, I'm going home, so I don't know what you finna do. I had a lot of friends that were like, you should go home. I had friends that would say that, or
Right.
their parents would say, you need to go home. Though
Right.
I had those friends as well. So within that,
She said having no curfew instills fear because I don't come home too late. But that too late is up to you. And I love that Sam says that. She says because there's an expectation. And I think that wraps up your last point of respect, right? The expectation is I'm not going to stay out till 8 o'clock in the morning without texting and saying I'm staying over here because I respect you enough to know there's no you need to be blah blah blah, but I'm gonna respect you enough to say like I'm not coming.
or I'm gonna respect you
home.
enough. I'm gonna respect you enough to not put you in a position where now you have to be a helicopter parent. I'm gonna respect you
Right.
enough to not make you have to sit up and worry. To that point, there are some nights I'll get home and you'll be asleep, but I will not. I'm never gonna try to stress my mom out. I'm never gonna
Right.
try to be like, yo, yeah, boys, we should just go to the table neighborhood because it's gonna be funny if my mom freaks out. Like, I would never do that. And I know some kids who will make a decision. Other day, I'm watching a kid make that decision of he's saying, I don't want to go home. My parents aren't gonna let me in. It's too late. And I'm saying, dude, what's more stressful? Coming home late or them not knowing where you is? And he couldn't see how that was a disrespectful action.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the most disrespectful thing you're saying of I'm gonna go just walk the streets for 6 hours until my parents let me in. How do you think your mom's gonna feel about that? And I was trying to explain him that, but he couldn't understand that because in his household, they weren't doing those things. They to my knowledge, they must have not been doing those things to make it clear that even though you may disappoint us in this situation, that is ultimately the better action to make because, and I don't know what decision I ended up making. I couldn't convince the van all night. But what I was saying was, to me, we talk about expectations, protecting peace, and all these types of things. What that culminates in is in those types of moments, we make a decision that what? Everybody wins.
Right.
Not everybody wins, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm safe and you know that I'm safe.
Right.
That's the win-win at the ground
And
level.
I think the other thing too is like with all of the kids, me and your dad pretty much know most of the people that y'all run with. Like know y'all. Or if we don't know, you'll be like, oh, whatever. But like, when you were younger, I could say this for when you were younger versus now, because now as you're older, you have your own friends. But when y'all were younger, we knew where you were gonna be, or we knew who you were running with.
Right.
But I also wasn't that helicopter parent. Like I know that there were parents that would say, I'm checking in Life 360 and you're moving at 40 miles per hour, you're in somebody's car flipping out, right? And I'm like, yo, like, is that the intent of Life 360? Like, no, they're good. Know that they're okay. Unless you feel, because parents put narratives in their brains. And as believer parents, I just think that that's a dangerous thing because we can't allow our kids to transition to the next season of their lives. So I think we did a really good job talking about communication is really important. The value of communication
and breaking that down for sure. And if I can, let me do the quick recap.
Yes,
so
do the quick recap.
Close out because it is longer, but I think it was longer for a purpose, and I don't mind longer. And it was engaging. I don't mind that, but I think
thank you all who have joined and come and gone and on a replay.
Of course. And for the recap, when we talk about, and what was the whole talk about? What are the tangible benefits of communication?
Really?
Saving time. Yes, it requires some heavy lifting, but it's ultimately when you are able to operate on agreed upon systems, that's how computers work, right?
Yes.
They operate on agreed upon systems and that saves time. Talk to understand, not to win. Talking isn't a competition. It's not a boxing match. It's not a chess game. No, I'm not trying to outsmart you. I want you to understand what I'm trying to say, and I want to understand what you're trying to say. And that is what creates peace, right? Being able to communicate in a way that wins for both of us, whether that be communication or non-communication, but it allows us to both win-win authentically, not behind smoke and mirrors or masks. That's what protecting peace is. And I want to add to a piece that you are the ultimate determiner of protecting your peace. And sometimes you have to take peace, and sometimes you have to give peace.
So let's take the communication high road. Go ahead.
So that goes into showing respect, right? Doing what's best for you, doing what's best for them, and having those conversations. And then when those boundaries are created, upholding them. And then finally, both for younger people or for older people, be understood by explaining. Don't expect people to be psychics. sometimes, like we talked about, now is one of the crazy things I realized. Sometimes things that you think are simple aren't that simple.
Right.
And to assume they're simple doesn't always work, especially when it comes to boundaries in a relationship. So I think if you do these things, not only will you save time, protect peace, and show respect when you begin to improve your communication, but there's a bunch of other benefits we could go on about probably for a long time. But what does this summarize to? It feels better. It is better. And you talk better.
Okay. Communication works. But shameless plug, I will say that there's a lot of these principles that were organic or spoken of, but I think what you do, and I say this all the time, I'm like our in-house therapist coach, communication coach, is you take the time to break that down. So shameless plug for Austin. If you are that person who struggles with any of the things we talked about, and there is a specific relationship, no, he is not a counselor, but he is an excellent communication coach. And a lot of it is done through observation and experiences. And he's able to ask those. I love that, drop the mic, but he's able to like dig through that. So again, I know that that's something that he does as a communication coach. If you want to be a guest on Generations Live, which can be pre-recorded or live on Wednesdays at 1 p.m., we would love to have you here. He said Vivek Patel. Hold on, let me see. Vivek Patel. Maybe you can connect Latasha. Okay, that would be awesome. To Latasha. Okay, we don't know who Vivek is, but we would like to know who that person is. That's great. Thank you so much, Nancy. So the plug is that the Generational Lives, if you want to be a guest on that show, go to austinvonmartin.com. You can sign up to be a guest on Generational Lives. I'm the producer. I'm not on the front end of it. And then the last piece that I want to say is that we're going to be doing some live Socratic conversations. Am I saying it correctly? Socratic conversations. And what that means is just digging deeper and taking that communication to that next life using some of these techniques. We're going to be launching those at Ephesus Ministries. We're going to be doing these sessions. So if you see invites, if you're in the Buffalo area, we would love to know that you'd want to be a panel to do that. And Austin will be facilitating those. I'll be streaming them. But a lot of good stuff happening over here with us. I think, God has been good through this gap year. I think you've learned a lot. So I'm going to wrap up, turn it back over to you. Wait, let me make sure I went through all of the momager duties. I think I did. Oh, the prize in the beginning for people who tag the most. Nancy and Samantha, I think that I have both of your most relevant email addresses, but if you could send them to me, I'm going to send you guys both a digital gift card for tagging a lot of people and helping us to almost get to our goal tonight. I think collectively we had a really active audience, up to 7 or 8 at some point. So thank you guys so much for that. So I'm saying thank you to those. That's why showing up on time can get you some blessings, can get you some goodies. So I'm going to send you guys something digitally. So make sure you text me the email that you want me to send that to, and I'll send it out tomorrow, because after this, I'm going to soak in a bath, because Nancy beat me up this morning. I keep saying that, but like, I appreciated the workout. And so, yeah, those are the things that I wanted to talk about. So, Austin, you want to wrap up on anything?
Just for the quick wrap up, of course, I think that, like we were talking about, there's a lot of this curriculum that I break down logically and I go through and I help people create better strategies and solutions, and more importantly, mindsets to have effective communication. If you are someone who's curious or you have someone's name in your mind, not to throw them under the bus, be sure to direct them to my website, like she said, at www.austinvonmartin.com, where I have discovery sessions. We can figure out, even if we create a simple strategy where you can make applicable change in your chosen KRI, meaning whatever you want to measure. Maybe you just want to have clear conversations. Let's time them. Maybe you want to just speak better and have less ums. Let's count the ums. Or maybe you want to have more engaging conversation. And let's see how many people would rate you on a scale of 1 to 10 your engagement. I'm saying that to say communication is possible to improve, and it has tangible benefits, these things included. So it was a pleasure to be here tonight with you guys. I learned so much. It's always a pleasure to get on these with my mom, the wonderful co-host and producer. So hopefully you guys will tune in next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Sheesh, that's not good. At 1 p.m. to check out my Generational Gap live interview. And if you would, like she said, like to be a guest in it, be sure to check out my website. Just scroll to the orange button. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your night. Have a good one.
Dude, you cannot just leave. You gotta play the outro music.
I'm gonna dance today.
What? Wait, look at what we play. Thank you guys for joining. Your dad back.